Good to see you guys again.
Hi, Brian. Good to be back.
So today we're going to talk about the importance of integration of our cyber tools. So I think educational institutions are handling more sensitive data than ever, including financial, personal information, as we've discussed in previous episodes. So, what's the benefit of integrating our different cyber tools?
I always think about whenever I have a conversation with a customer, it's really, really important when you talk to them for the first time, get an understanding of what they're using in their organisation from a cyber perspective, and having that integration with other cyber security tools and from other vendors, I think is important because it means that you're stronger together to start off with. But it also means that the sophistication now between linking those tools together has changed as well. So they're a lot easier to do. Before you had to write code and stuff like that. Nowadays it's a couple of clicks. I mean, you know more about that than probably myself. But yeah, it's much, much easier to do. Any cybersecurity vendor that says they can solve all the cybersecurity issues in the world's basically lying, I'm afraid, and can't do that. It's absolutely. So better together is always the way forward. At Mimecast, we have over 300 plus integrations with other cybersecurity vendors as well. So, yeah, it's not. I don't ever get on a call with a customer and we talk about integrations and we say to them, it's not a case of if we integrate with your your existing cybersecurity vendors, it's how many cybersecurity vendors we integrate with.
Yeah, and I think the benefit of that is to exchange telemetry between those different systems. I mean, you talk about the 300 different integrations, and previously it was about writing code. I mean, these days, certainly with Mimecast, these things are out of the box. They're just there for you to use and deploy. And certainly within Mimecast, we see that as a core strategy of ours, and we don't charge for any of the integrations too. They're just there because people want to have that broader understanding of threats within their organization. Maybe something happened, maybe you've caught something, maybe something's come through an email. Is that email actually, or that maybe a piece of malware that came through an email, does that malware exist anywhere else? What about your endpoint detection systems? Maybe that's sitting on somebody's workstation somewhere, and being able to coordinate those different threats together. I think it's priceless, being able to, and let's be honest, most IT professionals, wherever they sit, they don't want to be looking at 18 different consoles to be able to see what's going on. They want that single, I hate the expression single pane of glass, but you know what I mean. That single view of their organisation being able to see what's going on, and that's and I think that's why the integration piece is key, to give you that joined up picture of your organisation. I mean, I don't know, Rob, you can probably talk. I know certainly within broader industries, maybe traditional financial institutions, they've been very good at doing these things. They've been doing it since the 1960s, being able to integrate those things. How do you see that playing out within schools and the education sector? Do you think they're becoming more savvy to that integrated
Yeah,
piece?
Absolutely. I mean, it goes back to on the previous episode that we've done around resource in organisations, and you mentioned about the multiple management consoles. They just don't have time to be able to look at and learn how to use multiple management consoles, to have it all in, as you mentioned, the single pane of glass. I don't like the expression either, by the way, but having it all from the single pane of glass, for want of a better phrase, it makes such a big difference. Because it means that because of the limited resource, only has to learn one management console, train themselves how to use one solution as opposed to using multiple solutions. So it makes a massive difference, I think, yes. It also keeps their costs down at the end of the day as well.
Yeah, and I think it's becoming more sophisticated these days, isn't it? Certainly, in the past, linking things together was great, but then you end up with a whole ton of meaningless data, and you can spend days on end just looking at alerts. Is this alert important? Is it not important? And then you just get to the point where you're getting too much of this, so you just ignore it, don't you?
Yeah.
But I think integrations these days are becoming more sophisticated, and being able to reduce those alerts actually down to something that's something that needs investigation, something that needs looking at, rather than alerting on every single little thing that goes on.
Yeah, so I think we're obviously taking that the age-old concept of defence in depth, which has always been a great idea, having the right tool for the job. But as you say, we're getting away from having the multiple consoles and having to look at each individual console, see what's going on. So we can obviously get context on what's going on by having those different tools. So we can get, obviously, someone's maybe received an email, targeted phishing email of some sort, which in isolation is, it's just a phishing email. But if you then have the context of maybe some failed logins, maybe some files have been copied somewhere that wouldn't have been copied normally, you start building up that picture, don't you, of this is an attack going on here, this is not an isolated incident.
Yeah.
So you can hone in, and I suppose that's where AI tools as well can start filtering that data, as you say, Rob, getting rid of all the false positives, if you like, to get down to showing context.
Yeah, and I guess it's also too, I mean, you mentioned an attack, the malicious side of things. It's not just the malicious side of things, isn't it? A lot of people within most organizations, within their day-to-day jobs, just want to get their job done. Yeah. And if that means, circumventing IT policy and using personal OneDrives, personal Dropboxes, G drives, whatever they may well be, and dumping a whole load of data out on there, some cloud storage, using personal emails, putting stuff on USB drives that they shouldn't do, and personal devices and all those types of things. If you can be more aware of data generally within your organization and how that's being used, I think that's an important point too. And if you can feed that into the whole, we started off talking about a couple of episodes ago, talking about the human risk, the human factor of these things. If you can feed all of that information, who's being attacked, how people are using data within their day-to-day lives, into the broader telemetry of your organization, and understand different users' behavior, I think that's gold dust too, isn't it? Because I think there's some stat out there that something like 80% of all attacks are caused by something like 8% of the people that are working with you. Certainly, from the internal perspective, as I say, maybe not malicious, maybe people just doing things to
sometimes it's just to do their job.
Yeah, exactly.
They just want to make their lives easier for themselves. It's in education space, it's very rarely in that scenario that it's malicious. It's normally I don't want to work, I can't take my work home with me as such because it's on my PC in the office or whatever. I just send it to my home email address or whatever, and I can do it from home. But you don't want that to be happening. You don't want data being exfiltrated or disappearing. So how do you recognise that, and having the integrations across your organisation enables you to sort of figure that out as an organisation.
Exactly.
Abnormal activities,
because there's just a limitless amount of things to integrate too, isn't there?
Yep.
So being able to understand those things. I mean, you think about data loss from the perspective of a web browser. How many different ways can you lose data through a web browser? There's just so many, isn't there?
Yeah.
And whether it's cloud storage, whether it's personal emails, but being able to control that. In the past, I think a lot of organizations wanted to lock things down, blacklist everything, and whitelist a certain chunk of solutions. But that obviously has its own limitations too, to be able to do that. So if you can integrate your different solutions, understand that data, that telemetry better, I think it makes it a lot easier for people to actually work within that organization and actually get things done quicker and more efficiently, really. I mean, I guess, one of the other things too, talking about data loss and, AI, as we were, with the rise of AI, how many times people take sensitive data these days, and throw it into ChatGPT, Copilot, or something like that, unsanctioned thing, solutions, and the integration to that. How do you know about those things? It's really about integrating your different tools and tool sets to be able to give you that larger, more holistic picture.
And you were talking about ChatGPT and such like. People don't realise that whatever you load up into ChatGPT then belongs to ChatGPT to do with whatever they want to. So if you're loading up sensitive data into ChatGPT, that means ChatGPT now has that sensitive data as well. So as an organisation, whether you're education or not, do you really want potential research data being loaded up into ChatGPT? I would say no.
Yeah,
It's
and
a human risk bit again, isn't it? It's educating
exactly,
users that
exactly.
that's not a clever idea and this is why.
Exactly,
Yeah.
educating users about cybersecurity and why those things are good or bad points. But also then I suppose, giving them a legitimate tool to be able to do that. Okay, maybe you don't want to use ChatGPT, but, there's other things that you can do, other partnerships that you can form within your organisation, and certainly with schools. I mean, I think it's an education establishments, AI, generative AI in general, it's not something that they can ignore. It's not something that they can block out. I mean, they need it as part of what they do, don't they?
Yep.
So, it's being able to integrate it and use it in a sensible way.
I think that's always the case. It's you can't just say no to people. There's obviously a reason there, as you're saying. Generally, it's not malicious, so you need to give them a controlled alternative.
Especially in this sector as well. It's very rarely is it malicious.
Yeah.
Very, very rarely is it malicious.
And I think, say, by having that telemetry from all the different tools you've got, gives you that baseline to be able to identify that these things are happening, and can then obviously tie it down and educate those users.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I suppose, does this sort of impact cyber insurance as well? If you've got all integrations with your tools, is that going to tick cyber insurance boxes?
I think that's going to help. Hopefully it'll help reduce the cost of your premium at the end of the day, isn't it? That's kind of what you want to do, isn't it?
You'd hope so. Yeah.
I mean, everyone talks about things like best of breed, and at Mimecast we have several solutions that I would consider best of breed. One thing we do at Mimecast really well is that we recognise that education doesn't have the budgets that some other organisations have, so we have quite, shall we say, and I'll be upfront with this as well when I say giving away students free of charge, for instance, as part of what we do at Mimecast for some of our solutions. It makes life a lot easier for them to get budget. So it's the support out there as well. But yeah, going back to what you're saying about cyber insurance, cyber insurance is, I think nowadays is kind of like almost like a must-have. I think in regards to that, and keeping the costs down for that cyber insurance can only help if you've got that integrations with other cybersecurity vendors. Definitely.
Yeah, and I think it's about broadening it out, isn't it? To doing anything, the more you can protect yourself internally, the cheaper any insurance, whether it's cyber insurance or what have you, is going to be. I think one of the integrations, I mean, as you say, within Mimecast, we partner with a whole bunch of different people, 300 different integrations. But one of the key things, or one of the key partners that we have are vendors like CrowdStrike or Netscope. And I think the benefit that we can add there is about that whole endpoint understanding. So as I say, if an email comes in from the Mimecast side of things, if an email comes in with a piece of malware associated to it, we can then tell CrowdStrike that maybe this is a new piece of malware, maybe it's not been seen before. We can update CrowdStrike to so it can learn about that. Similar to vice versa, if CrowdStrike was to find something on an endpoint, somebody puts in a USB stick into a PC, it picks up that malware, it can understand it, then it can alert Mimecast, to say that, this is a piece of malware, see that it's not coming in through different people's inboxes. But then there's also the broader, that's from the security side of things, but coming back to that human risk, human risk is a big part really of what Mimecast does these days. So, we understand, from a traditional point of view, we've understood how human risk affects people from an email perspective. Emails coming in, lots of people within an organization get targeted in different ways depending on who you are and depending on your job role, and those things change. I always remember during COVID that apparently within Mimecast itself, it was the facilities management people who had been targeted more with malicious emails during COVID because they were giving out chairs and tables and desks and whatever facilities management people do, and then we kind of broadened on from that, and then there's the classic side of, financial people working in financial organizations or financial departments being targeted, maybe coming towards the end of the financial year, and then the beginning of the new financial year, maybe the attacks move on to other people. That's just the way attacks work. But coming into the integration piece. It's about understanding all of those things and how they can affect things. So, we talk about malware being spotted from Mimecast from an email side of things. We talk about malware being spotted from the endpoint, from CrowdStrike side of things. But then we can build all that together within Mimecast, to broaden out that human risk side. So who was it who stuck that USB stick into that workstation with that malware on it? And is that same person someone who clicked on a phishing link last week? And building up that bigger picture. So it's integration from the security standpoint of protecting, and detecting, but it's also integration from building up that picture of the human risk side of things, and who are those risky people within your organizations. And then once you know who those risky people are within your organizations, you can have connotations for it. We can then link in, you can then have integrations to identity access management systems, to then have restrictions on various things. Maybe I'm risky because I've clicked on a phishing link, because I've put a USB stick in with malware, what have you. There can be connotations there going forward. Simple things. We could maybe going forward put people in different groups. Within Active Directory. With the context of I work in finance, I am risky. And I have a sign-off of, £50,000. Maybe we should reduce that sign-off that I have, because it's about understanding. Once you've understood who the risky people are, you need to, I hate the expression, but, a very American expression is understand that blast radius. What happens? What's the context? And I think it comes back to what we were saying previously, last episode. I think we're talking about it's not just protect and detect, but it's about how you respond and recover, and which that feeds into it. So if somebody... and the whole risk analysis thing. So if somebody is risky, they work in finance, and they've got this big sign off of £50,000, what's the connotations of that happening? Because people falling for different things, really it's about roles and responsibilities, isn't it? If somebody's new into the organisation, they're junior, and they click on a phishing link, is it really such a big deal? But maybe somebody's more senior within the organisation, then it can have huge connotations. So I think those integrations, as I say, whether it's your CrowdStrikes, your Netscopes, and understanding those sorts of details. But obviously Microsoft. I mean, Microsoft is prevalent across most, lots of organisations, and I guess particularly schools. Maybe Google are probably quite strong in schools.
Yeah,
too.
they are. Yes, yeah.
Being able to integrate with their different technologies and understand that data from, as I say, from two sides, the security side of things, but the human risk side, I think, is becoming increasingly important, certainly from what I'm seeing.
Yeah, and it's pulling all that information together, isn't it? And because of the amount of integrations that Mimecast has, it is able to pull that a lot more information to build that better picture of the human risk within your organisation, even to go as we were talking about earlier on, about 8% of employees within organisations cause 80% of the incidents within organisations. So how do you identify that 8% with the integrations that we have with other cybersecurity and our own integrations as well across the stack of solutions that Mimecast has? We're able to build up this real detailed picture of each individual person within your organisation. My goodness, this sounds a bit Big Brotherish, doesn't it, really? But it's not. The idea here is that you can build a decent profile of each individual person within the organisation, and then you can help them and assist them and guide them as to their cybersecurity journey, I suppose, and their cyber awareness journey. That's kind of the way I see it. It's a good thing for everybody, not a bad thing for everybody.
Yeah, I mean, people have different profiles within an organisation, don't they? So, for example, if I was to hand my notice in today, the first people I will tell is HR. They'll update their HR system. And that fact that I've now handed my notice in, it's useful to disseminate that information to IT solutions. Because if then I get onto OneDrive, Google Drive, whatever it may well be, Salesforce, whatever it else is that you're using, and start downloading a whole load of documents, that's perhaps something that we that needs to be curtailed. Part of those, and people's profiles change. As I say, attacks change on different people depending on who they are and depending on where they're working and depending on whatever time of year it is. I mean, the classic example is the run up to Black Friday. Lots of retail organisations get attacked.
Yep.
And I'm sure and I always kind of say every organisation, whoever they are, has that kind of Black Friday. That where they're more vulnerable.
Exam time is what I'm thinking. Education
Right,
space, yeah.
exactly.
Exam time.
Yeah.
That's where people.
Certainly in the education space, and I've seen that too. That also there was the clearing side of things
Yep,
for
as well.
students.
Yep.
When they
Universities.
when they want to look for different universities. It's crazy enough. I was working with one a betting company once, and they met at the time. I don't know whether it's like that now, because it was a few years ago. But they made something like 80% of their revenue over the Grand National weekend, in terms of what they do. And imagine if that was to go wrong. Imagine if those types of events, were to stop their business. And it's much the same, isn't it, with students, as you say, come out to exams. It's a big deal for them. Within that different arena. So and that I guess kind of leads back to the benefit of being able to integrate those different tools, isn't it, to understand understand those attacks, how they're happening, because people are getting attacked, people are doing silly things that they perhaps shouldn't do, from the human error side of things, being able to understand where you are, what that bigger picture looks like within your organisation.
So the integrated telemetry, basically, I think we've all agreed, basically, we don't like the term single pane of glass, but it's probably the best way of describing this.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it gives you that bigger picture, and that's really important to give context to that information. So rather than just having these little point events happening around the organisation, we can put some context in there and work out that, maybe there's something a little bit more serious going on that we need to investigate. And it's hopefully going to also affect your cyber insurance in a positive way, because you've actually got these things linked together and you're taking a proactive approach to your cybersecurity.
For sure.
Absolutely.
Yep.
So great chat again, guys. Thank you very much.
Thanks,
We'll see you
Brian.
next time.
Yeah, good to see you.